us God, all the governments, Oscar, make decisions that will be just, God, die gedurende ons vergadering gewys het, ons moet verstaan en dat u op en al ons besluite aan u op lele toe aan Kokelo in Keliseo in Africa. This in your holy name. Order. In the game, to draw your attention to the rules of the city. Kindly ensure that your cell phone, that you hear the procedure. That includes no cutting, no jeering, no subject. Thank you to be with us. The second of
reply to the debate on the Premier.
Thank you, Secretary. I will now afford the Honourable to the Premier.
Thank you, Speaker, to see that they've taken the trouble to come and listen to my last reply to a State of the Province address. And namkelekile nonke diyanithanda.
Order. I get the House to order, please. The Premier's honour.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I also like my colleagues on for the inclusion that they are. The House on various aspects in the relatively brief time that I had at my disposal to set out all of their extraordinary successes. And I their speeches because it just shows me what is possible for South Africa if a government focuses, keeps its eyes on the prize of what we can do and does its job properly. And thank you. You start communist. And anybody with the slightest understanding of history, of the concept of freedom, and of the nation would be anti-communist. It is a complete contradiction in terms to wage a liberation struggle to achieve communism, and I'm about to explain why. Communism is the antithesis of liberation and very antithesis. But what communism like that's a politicide. All of those are used to different forms of murder undertaken by communist regimes in the 20th century. I looked up 7 different on the number of deaths caused by communist systems of ordinary people. The lowest estimate is is 161 million people dead. And whichever way you look at it, it is horrific. The concept of communism and progressive, and that can only be the exact opposite. That we maximize freedom and choice so that individuals can chart their own course in life, that they can learn from their mistakes and their successes, and through hard work they can ensure a better life for their children. And so we believe the role of the state is to protect people's rights and freedoms, to extend opportunities to them, and to provide those things to people that they cannot reasonably be expected to provide for themselves.
Premier, kindly just take your seat. Honourable Judge, there was to provide input. The Premier's response. Interjection. Spoken through to the Premier. Thank you. Premier.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. We sum up our political philosophy in our vision. We want to lead the Western Cape to become a highly skilled, innovation-driven, resource-efficient, connected, high-opportunity society for all. Now, I'm not surprised the Honourable Doug Moore isn't here today, because he really dug a big hole for himself by saying vision of the concept of redress. Madam Speaker, it is premised on the concept of redress. Redress is integrated into every vision. For example, skilled are highly skilled. Skills, as President Mandela said, is the form of redress because it gives people the opportunity to improve their circumstances. Innovation means new ways of doing things that make it easier and more possible for people to advance. Resource means people's money so that we can spend 82% of our budget on service delivery to the poor. A government that does not steal your money but spends it on service delivery to the poor. Connected means redress. The digital economy, the only way to connect to a digital economy is through access to the internet. You can live and opportunity as each individual is redress. That is redress creates progress, advancement, redress. Spending money where it needs to. What is the ANC's? You didn't understand what I said. Directors, 30 executives who were paid 514 million rand. And then they asked the question, for what actually? For what actually? And of course, Doug Moore would answer, for redress. But what happened? 514 million rand, that is $500 million rand, went to a handful of people because of their political actions. That is ANC. They enriched the few to empower many. During the time, the economy was so undermined that almost 10 million now, that population of a country like Sweden, for example. We now have almost 10 million ANC-style redress. And what happens to
Order.
Eskom even touch the Watsons. It does touch the, because when we had load shedding in the minimum cost board with the help of the then gone into business rescue to giving kickback to politicians. And while we have load shedding in South Africa, and while people being paid because lines of business rescue, the Guptas are in Dubai holding a R1 million South Africa. Then that, Madam Speaker, more than that, Madam Speaker, the workers are protected from tax and they are protected from prosecution. So I can summarize, and we all need to understand in redress the C's. Sailing C's is the ANC version of redress. And Madam Speaker, the first C
is no she in this House. The Honourable Premier is on her feet and you will address her in such a way as an honourable member. Thank you. You have now made a grand entrance. Compose yourself. You may proceed, Premier.
Thank you very much. The 7 C's of ANC transformation start with communism and national democracy. Then it has to go to centralization. Central supreme leader is cronies. That results in crony capitalism instead of national democratic revolution, which immediately is followed by corruption and a criminal state, which means the accountability mechanisms like the National Prosecuting Authority and the South African Revenue Services are captured, and then there are no consequences. And that is why the ANC stands for absolutely no consequences for anyone. And that is the political philosophy, absolutely no consequences. So by stealing in the name of redress.
Sorry, there's finger pointing happening across the floor, Premier, so I need to call both sides of the House to order. Thank you.
If we only sin, and this is a phrase the ANC will understand, whose only sin is the colour of their skin. We thought we were getting entrenched from Eskom or given voluntary severance packages by Eskom because of the colour of their skin, are highly skilled, and they are being snapped up worldwide, especially in Middle Eastern countries, who understand diversify their energy economies, and retrenched South African experts are the best to do that, and all over the Middle East, the purpose of employees while and while Provin is desperately Eskom, Madam Speaker, Eskom human resources expert. That is why the ANC can never self-correct, Madam Speaker. It can never self-correct. And anybody who believes that the ANC can self-correct is going to take South Africa into another 10 wasted years. ESCOM, Madam Speaker, ESCOM is massively overstaffed and massively underskilled. Now put those two things together. And instead of fixing the problem, so I'd like to say to the Honourable Doug Moore in his absence, don't come to this.
Please, Premier, kindly take your seat. Honourable Chacham, should you wish to rise on a point of order, you do so. The Premier is replying to the debate. The debate was a political debate, and I'm allowing the Premier latitude to get to the relevance that Honourable Yankee and Honourable Magaka is calling for. So you may proceed, Premier. Yes, you may. So take your... Yes.
You are not going to get what you want from us. We are not going to sit here, be like children taught in a class. You are wasting the time of this Premier to finish the response.
Honourable
In fact, you
Magaka,
are disrupting the sitting. Honourable Speaker.
Sorry, take your seat,
please stop that thing.
Thank you. Take
we
your seat.
understand that you are a speaker from the DA, but you don't
Honourable
have
Magaka,
to be
take
a
your
DA
seat,
lead,
please.
Be a speaker.
As the Speaker of this House, if I may address you, Honourable Magaka, I have a duty. You get politics and then you get bad manners. So to call me out, Honourable Magaka, may I address you? I am speaking to you. You are sitting down and talking to me. You need to rise if you wish to address me when I am done. I am not going to, and you might call me the school teacher, and I might treat you like a child and send you to the naughty corner, but I am not going to allow you to be rude and disrespectful in this House. Should you not want to hear the reply, you have the option of leaving, but you are not going to be here and be rude and disrespectful. That is the point. So mind your composure, mind yourself. You may proceed, Premier.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Speaker. The relevance is the concept of redress. The Honourable the Opposition repeatedly accused us of not understanding or applying redress, and I'm explaining that we are the only party in this House who actually understands and applies redress. And let me add another thing. The Honourable Doug Moore should not come to this House and lecture us about tender processes and the use of public money. There was one columnist who said very insightfully this week, for any ANC official to stand up in public and breathe even one word about public money is more than bad manners and poor taste. It is abuse. And it is abuse to have the nerve to come here and talk to us about the use of public money is pure cheek. Now,
Premier, kindly take your seat. I think it's important for the country to see what is actually happening in this House. There is politics and there is sheer bad manners. Honourable Chacham, you are being disrespectful. I am speaking and you are shouting from your seat. The first rule of Parliament is to wait until someone else take your seat. I am speaking. Take your seat, please. You need to wait to be recognised, and then you stand and then you speak. I am addressing the House and you are launching into your own attack on the Premier. It is unparliamentary, Honourable Chacha, and I am not going to allow this House to degenerate into a circus. So manage yourself, otherwise you run the risk of being sent out purely because you cannot maintain the dignity and decorum of this House. I will not have it become a shebeen. Thank you. Yes, Honourable Lecker.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, I think we all want this House to be like any other House, that each and every one of us be treated with respect, that there are no insinuation that will tell you will be sent to a nauticon. And if that is the case, Speaker, I think I want to put it to the House that at least we need not to hear you speaking at all times. Because whilst you're engaging with the rest of the people here, you are also causing chaos. So I'm hereby appealing and requesting the Speaker of the House to conduct this House and treat each and every one of us equally, not as if some are blue and some are red. I thank you, Speaker.
Honourable Lecker, your point is sustained. However, let me bring the attention of the House and the gallery to the fact that your howling necessitates me to call the House to order. And since you arrived, you have been instrumental in that backbench of chirping and howling. So it is my duty, if the interjections become too loud and they drown out the speaker, and if you don't follow the simple rules, wait to be recognized, stand on your feet. These are basic principles. After 57 months, you should know. What example are we setting as an institution to the electorate out there? We should be the example. We should be the example. And the reference to school children is relevant because you know that school children behave better sometimes, I think, than the members of this House do. And that is why I am saying we need to be the example to the electorate. All I'm asking you, you can do your politics, but do it with dignity and respect, please. Thank you. You may proceed. Sorry, Member Wenger. Premier, kindly take your seat. There's a member on the floor. Member Wenger.
Madam Speaker, on a point of order, my recollection of the rules states that the ruling of the Speaker may not be questioned.
Absolutely.
And therefore, I'd like to raise a point of order on the Honourable Member's point earlier.
Thank you, Honourable Wenger. Your point is sustained. Honourable Magaka. You see, again, here we have it. Two members on their feet without being recognised. Honourable Magaka.
While we all know that the Speaker has powers, and the ruling of the Speaker is superior to all of us here. However,
the minute you get to however, Honourable Magaka, you are then disputing.
You see where you really fail. I'm using the same words. It's a conjunction in English, however. Yeah, I'm using the same conjunction that you used. You know, here, we're supposed to be behaving as members who are representing our own constituency. We have to react according to the same rules. We have to heckle according to the same rules. You know, each and everything that is said and affecting us, we have a form of responding, just like any house in the world, okay? Therefore, we are not going to be told by you to shut up right through as if we're school children. In fact, even referring to us as Western school children, it's an abuse of that position. As a result, if you don't want us here, just chase us away so that you talk alone quietly.
Honourable Magaka, you have every right, it is your democratic right to act and represent your constituency. The point I am trying to make as the Speaker is do it with dignity and respect. We don't need this House to spiral into something that becomes the talk of the town. We have taxpayers and the electorate watching the leaders in this province. The behaviour is appalling, to say the least. That is all I'm asking you. You are allowed to interject. You are allowed to protect and represent your electorate, but do it with dignity, please. Thank you. You may proceed, Honourable Premier.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. To pick up where I left off about the ANC's nerve in even daring to raise our use of public money in this House, I don't have to speak for the Honourable Windy, although it was interesting for me to see that he was the target of most of the attack of the speech on my SOPA address, and I can see that what is already happening is the Honourable Dugmore is going to be leading the pack in trying to tooth-comb every aspect of his life to manufacture scandals and outrage, starting with the Honourable Doug Moore's speech in this House. The Honourable Windy is very capable of defending himself, and he will do so. But on the question of the McKinsey contract, let me say what I recall. I recall 3 attempts for us to draw up a proper strategic intervention to grow jobs in the economy as a matter of priority. And I remember on each of those 3 occasions, our analysis was that we were falling short of a really impactful plan and that we needed outside assistance and that we needed it fast. We had very painful memories of what happened in Cape Town when we tried to do the same, went out on a general tender, took the lowest quote, and ended up with a group of Marxists drawing up Cape Town's strategic and economic plan that we had to put in the dustbin and which was fruitless and wasteful expenditure deluxe because it was unusable by any government with our political philosophy. Here we had a situation where McKinsey's had just finished round 1 Pakisa for the national government. And when we studied it, that was the kind of plan we wanted. But we didn't only want a plan, Madam Speaker. In this government, we actually implement our plans. But we wanted a Western Cape-specific job-driving growth plan that would enable us to implement something that would have real impact. And so we did. And we went through the right process, and it was audited by the Auditor General, who found no problem with it. And you know what? Do you know what, Madam Speaker? The result of the implementation of that plan is the statistics that you read here. This is the result of it. Employment in the Western Cape grew by 24%, well ahead of Gauteng at 16.6% and KwaZulu-Natal at 8.3%. The Western Cape has the lowest unemployment rate in South Africa, 14 percentage points lower than the national average on the broad definition. We have cut red tape to the tune of actually getting investment of 1 billion rand more than we otherwise would have. Green economy, we have 70% and are leading in making South Africa the greenest economy in the world, or the fastest growing green economy in the world. We are the finance hub of sub-Saharan Africa, having overtaken Johannesburg, and I can go on. That was the consequence of implementing the Khulisa plan. And we will defend it because it was money well spent, because it was a plan well implemented. And you know, Madam Speaker, many hundreds of people. We have created over 500,000 jobs since this administration came into office. Created the conditions through Project Khulisa to do that. And you know what? One of the people who have benefited is the lady called Nosipho that the Honourable Bierwinkel spoke about. The Honourable Bierwinkel selected her facts very carefully when talking about Nosipho, and she only told a fraction of the story that led to a completely distorted picture. Today I will tell you the full and true story of Nosipho and her daughter Thandi. Nosipho, Madam Speaker, was born in Jaga. Nosipho, Madam Speaker, was born in Jaga, outside Koffimvaba in the Eastern Cape. Once, long ago, this remote community was visited by a mobile clinic, but this service stopped. And Nosipho never understood why. Nosipho's father, Vumile, worked on the mines in Johannesburg, and he wanted his family, his wife, Nosipho, and her 3 brothers to move to Johannesburg so they could be with their father. But they could not. The reason they could not was primarily that if they left their land, they would lose it, because they had no secure title. It was beautiful land and it produced no food or jobs, but in old age it would mean some chickens and some mealies for them. And they lived under a chief that was completely unaccountable, and Nosipho and her mother, Bathandwa, had no protection from this thing that they'd heard about on Umhlobo Wenene called a constitution, Umgaqo Siseko. They knew nothing about their rights. They continued to live rightless, subservient lives on land to which they had no title. They did not understand this concept of land reform Premier, that they kept on hearing about over the radio.
Your conversation is drowning out the Speaker, Honourable Makaleni, and the Honourable Olivier. Thank you. You may proceed, Premier.
Once a year, their father, Vumile, came home to visit. And eventually, Nosipho's mother, Bathandwa, got sick. Eventually, the family saved 500 rand that they needed to hire transport to get their mother to the hospital. But by then, her HIV had developed into full-blown AIDS, and it was too late. And she could not take ARVs regularly because there were always medicine stock-outs at the local hospital. Eventually, tragically, Bathandwa died. And Nosipho, now a teenager, had to parent her younger brothers, keep them in school, keep herself in school while their father was working in Gauteng. But then the next tragedy struck. When Nosipho managed to get to the clinic in Tofimvaba, they had no Depo-Provera because there was another stock out. And so, because she had no control over her body and her sexuality, she got pregnant. And she dropped out of school in grade 10. But at the end of that year, half her class left as well because they were going to the Western Cape to have a better chance of passing matric. In their school, they didn't have any chance at all because the teachers were often absent and unprepared. They were often at meetings during school hours. There were no textbooks, there were no computers, there was no internet, there were no flush toilets, and the feeding scheme had stopped working long ago. That was in Tofimvaba. She desperately...
Kindly take your seat, please, Premier. Do you wish to rise on a point of order?
No.
Is it a point of order,
No,
Honourable Chacha?
I would want to know if the Premier can take a question.
Okay, can you take your seat, please? Premier, will you take a question? No, the Premier is not prepared to take a question. You may
I
proceed.
no doubt will answer his question because I've got a lot more to say about Nosipho.
Order, please. Your request has not been acceded to. Thank you.
Nosipho desperately wanted to go with her schoolmates so that she would also have a chance of passing matric, but she couldn't because she was pregnant and had to look after her younger siblings. And then, Madam Speaker, another tragedy struck. The money stopped coming from their father, Vumile. And they could not make contact with him to find out why, because Eskom's load shedding had destroyed the transmission line, so they couldn't reach their father, and they didn't know why the money had stopped coming. And eventually, after months, Vumile came back to Jaga, and they were thrilled to see him. But he told them a really sad story. He told them how the mine where he was working, the Aurora mine, had closed down after being bought by Kulubuse Zuma and Zondwa Mandela, who had bought the mine, And while they gave a donation to the ANC of 1 million rand, they did not pay their 5,000 workers anything for months and months and months. And the reason that they paid 1 million rand to the ANC was to be able to be sure that they would be beneficiaries again in the ANC's model of redress, which is just legalized corruption. Now,
order, please.
Now, Madam Speaker, Nosipho had to get work. She's pregnant. She's got no skills, hasn't even got grade 10, but she needs to go out and work. And Vumile told her that she had a distant uncle in Khayelitsha. And Vumile knew that this uncle had been allocated an RDP house with free basic services, and he was sure that this uncle would take Nosipho in so that she could live with him and look for a job in Cape Town. And so they combined all the child grants they were getting to buy Nosipho a taxi fare to come to Cape Town. And she arrived heavily pregnant and managed to find her uncle Abongile. And when she found Abongile, she found there were 3 other relatives from the Eastern Cape already living with him, all in backyard shacks. And Abongile, who looked after his family, built another shack in his backyard for Nosipho. Life was very difficult. They were overcrowded. There was only one toilet and many people using it. But her aunt, Abongile's wife, advised her to go to the clinic for the first time in her entire pregnancy, which she did. She went to the local clinic in Khayelitsha, and she had to wait a long time to see a doctor. She stood in the queue, she sat in the queue, but she did see the doctor. And she was really pleased that for the very first time, she was able to see a doctor in her pregnancy. The doctor was kind and friendly and examined her, but then said he would have to refer her to the new Khayelitsha hospital because he was worried that her placenta might be in the wrong place. He was worried about that. So she went home to tell her uncle and aunt about this thing that she'd heard about, that the placenta might be in the wrong place, and that she had to go to the hospital in Khayelitsha. And her uncle said, "This is amazing because we've just finished the hospital being built in Khayelitsha. It cost 650 million rand. And Nosipho remembered reports about how the SIU, the Hawks, had reported that health officials in the Eastern Cape had stolen 800 million rand, more than it cost to build the Khayelitsha hospital. And then she saw an article in the newspaper saying 631 million rand tender toilets collapse. And this is another scandal from the Eastern Cape, where ANC politicians getting toilet tenders for 631 million rand found that it was down the drain, literally. And Madam Speaker, that was the cost of an entire hospital to which Nosipho could now go. And she went to the hospital. And they put some cream on her tummy, and they took something that looked like a brush, a hairdryer, and they put it around her tummy, and she could see inside her uterus the baby. And that was an ultrasound. She'd never heard of an ultrasound, she'd never seen an ultrasound, but the doctor gave her an ultrasound. And the doctor said to her, "I'm very pleased to tell you that you're going to be the mother of a healthy baby girl, but there is a problem."
Order, please.
there is a problem. You have...
Order, please. Premier, take your seat, please. Members, order, please. Honourable Magaka. Members, Premier, please take your seat. Chief Whip.
May I take a question?
Premier, will you take a question?
Yes, Madam Speaker.
Thank you.
Premier, can you confirm that this chamber was the chamber of the Cape Province Administration, which had the same budget for the Eastern Cape, the Northern Cape and the Western Cape in the Cape Administration? They got no differentiation in budget.
Thank you.
I don't know any of the details of the budget, but I do want to say that apartheid did not steal the 800 million rand in the Eastern Cape that was stolen by ANC officials in recent years.
Honourable Magaka, compose yourself, please. You cannot sit and howl from your bench, Honourable Magaka. Honourable Magaka, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the chamber for the rest of the day, please. Thank you. In terms of Rule 44, please go. Honourable Magaka, leave. Thank you. Honourable Magaka, leave the chamber, please. Thank you. Honourable Magaka. Thank you. Premier, the House has now come to order. You may proceed.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. The doctor said to her there was worrying news that she had placenta previa and explained to Nosipho that with placenta previa, the placenta of the baby gets born before the baby, which means the baby gets starved of oxygen, which means it is likely to have brain damage if she has a normal birth. So the doctor said before she goes into labour, she has to have an emergency caesarean section, but that they would prefer to send her to a specialised maternity hospital to do that. And so she was taken by ambulance to the Mowbray Maternity Hospital, where she was operated the next day. Her baby was born. She decided to call her Batandwa after her late mother, Tandi for short. She had an UPGAR score of 9, which is fantastic, so it shows that everything is working with the baby. Nosipho was sore, very sore after the Caesar, but very, very happy because she realized that her baby was safe and would otherwise have not been born healthy, with huge implications for her and her child. So when she'd recovered, she started looking for a job. And because her uncle Abongile had political links with the ANC, he knew about an ANC MP who was looking for someone to work for him because that person's previous domestic helper had left. And so through these connections, Nosipho got the job, but found that her employer was really abusive. And then she learned that this top ANC official, whose name appeared in the newspaper, and who always claimed to stand up for the poor, had actually assaulted his previous housekeeper and then tried to bribe her to withdraw charges of assault. So she left his employ. Life was very, very hard. She couldn't get even from her old school outside Koffemwaba, she could not even get her school report, Madam Speaker, to show that at least she had passed grade 9. Eventually, she got temporary work at a cleaning contracting company who sent her all out to different jobs all over the Cape Peninsula for different clients. One of them was Isaac, who had a very nice house in Camps Bay, although she worked in many other houses as well, sometimes for people who weren't rich. And she could get there easily because the train system was working, the bus and taxi linked to the trains. But after the agency had taken some of her money for commission and she had paid her transport and then sent money back to Vumile and her brothers, she often had very little left. So she wanted to find a stable job in one place. She liked working for Isaac and his wife Joy. And when their son Simon came home from the preschool where he was, she liked to play with him too. So Nosipho was completely delighted when Joy offered her a full-time position. She learned more about the family. She learned that Isaac and Joy had moved from Johannesburg because Isaac moved his factory to Cape Town because of load shedding by Eskom, and he knew that because of the DA-run city council and province, there was no more stage 1 load shedding in the Western Cape, and that enabled him to run his business profitably from this province. And so he packed up his family and his business and moved. Joy started teaching Nosipho how to cook, and Nosipho showed real talent. Joy also heard about her child Thandi and said, bring her with you to work so that your baby isn't left alone or with relatives. And Simon also loved playing with Thandi when he got home from school and reading her books and doing other things. And eventually Joy sponsored cooking classes for Nosipho. And when she passed out of that course, she graduated at the top of her class. And she wanted to move on. She wanted to advance her career and get a better job. And because, as a result of Project Kulisa, tourism was growing and more hotels were opening, she applied to one of the new hotels to be a chef. She got a really good reference from Joy. She had her cookery course certificate with distinction, and she got the job. But there was a problem, because the hours were irregular, and she used to be able to catch the train. Now the train service was so unreliable that she had to catch 3 taxis. And eventually Metro Rail got so bad that the hotel had to arrange its own transport service for its workers, for which Thandi was very grateful. Thandi learnt that Metro Rail, like Eskom, is run by the national government, and it collapsed through corruption and mismanagement, which is the ANC's version of redress and transformation. Thandi wants to advance in her job, so she knows she must avoid falling pregnant until she is in a position to afford her own place. It's too crowded where her uncle is. She puts her name on the waiting list for a house, but then she learns she earns too much money to qualify. So she says she's going to have to earn enough to rent a place. And she's very pleased at the social housing projects that are going up that will enable her to do that. She's able to go to a clinic near to where she lives. There's never a medicine stock out, and she never has to do without contraception. The hotel is thriving. There's no longer just a summer season that there used to be. There are conferences all year round. The hotels have high occupancy, and Nosipho works hard to get promoted, and she becomes the head sous chef. Now she can get her own place. She rents a flat in a new social housing project, and she can live there and rent and afford to send Thandi to school. But as soon as she's there, 2 of her 3 brothers come and join her because they're also looking for better opportunities than they've got in Jaga and Koffemwaba. One is looking for a job, the other for a school to finish his matric. Just when Nosipho thought she had some space for herself, her space is filled up again. But family is family, and her uncle Abongile had looked after her, and she will look after her family. Her younger brother has a learning disability, which is why he could never pass his exams. But the disability had never been diagnosed. He needed a special school. He was admitted to one in the Western Cape and passed grade 12. So that Nosipho knew exactly why 64% of all special needs matriculants in South Africa come from the Western Cape. Where she came from, his disability would never have been diagnosed. Her other brother gets a low-paying job in a security company in Airport Industria. Nosipho advises him to follow her example. She said this is a low-paying job, but take it very seriously, because if you do your best, new opportunities will come for you to advance. He is one of the thousands of security guards employed by the private sector because of the failing police. Nosipho learns that the national police population ratio is 1 to 369, but in Cape Town it is 1 to 560. And her brother is doing something to help because he is one of the 2.36 million security guards employed in South Africa because of the police failure. In fact, there are 23 privately employed security guards for every policeman. Nosipho's brother aims to do well enough to be employed by the Cape Town Partnership because they train you as well to be a tourism ambassador and to get more skills. And so he wants to study security and he enrolls for a course to study further. And to help Nosipho and to say thank you for the shelter that she's offering him, he participates in Tandi's school's walking bus program to ensure that Tandi can get to and from school safely, and he does his bit for the community. Tandi has a very overcrowded classroom because there aren't enough teachers, because the money doesn't follow children to the places that they go to school. But the teachers are in school every day, and they are prepared, and she does have textbooks, and she does have access to computers, and she does have access to the internet. And there's a wonderful after-school program where she learns to dance and becomes a very good dancer and ends up also playing volleyball for the province. And there she gets 2 meals a day so that Nosipho doesn't have to worry about whether her child is eating. And Nosipho's brothers realize that if they want to have families one day, they have to advance at work before they decide to have children. Nosipho attends parent meetings and makes contributions to the school. And Tandi does so well that she applies for a maths and science school and gets into it, where she's going to be a boarder in Constantia, a beautiful suburb, so she can go to the specialized maths and science school. But a big event is about to happen, Madam Speaker. That event is an election. Tandi's family and Nosipho's family and Vumile's family have always been ANC. And now Nosipho wonders, if the ANC comes to government here in the Western Cape, won't the billions all be stolen again? Like, for example, the 800 million that could have built a nice hospital in our district in the Eastern Cape? Won't the employers leave like they have left the Eastern Cape? Won't the health service and schools and transport collapse? Those are the questions she wants the election candidates to answer, Madam Speaker. And one day she's on a taxi on the way home from work, and she hears an ANC candidate called Carol Bierwinkel being interviewed on the radio. And the interviewer asks her, why should people vote for the ANC when it has made millions more people unemployed, when it has stolen at least 700 billion rand, when it has destroyed public transport and state-owned enterprises and the criminal justice system? And Ms. Bierwinkel replies, the ANC is the oldest liberation movement in Africa, and we have zero tolerance to corruption. And most of all, The DA is together with the National Party, the party of apartheid. We don't want to bring back apartheid, says Carol Bierwinkel. The interviewer pauses, and he sounds puzzled. He says, but weren't you a member and public representative of the National Party for many, many years? Aren't you, like the rest of the National Party now in the ANC? Oh, replies Ms. Bierwinkel, don't keep talking about the past. Look to the future. And the interviewer asks, what do you promise in the future? And Ms. Bierwinkel answers, the ANC will self-correct by arresting only the whistleblowers who expose corruption, and by intensifying their redress plan in Eskom and PRASA and Metro Rail, and forcing the same policies onto the economy in every sphere. We have to get rid of more whites to ensure transformation. Nosipho shakes her head. She understands that in order to keep making progress, if Thandi is to have a better life than she's had, she has to ensure that the DA wins the election in the Western Cape again. She writes to her father, Vumile, but because the postal service broke down long ago, she has to send the letter back with a family member. She told him that since she left home, life had been very, very hard. But she'd only found one thing in the Western Cape. She found opportunity. She searched for it, she battled to find it, but she did. First a small opportunity, then a bigger opportunity, then a bigger opportunity, and she used every one. She said, my baby was born healthy. I could advance at work. Thandi will now become an engineer because she's good at maths and science and has had real opportunities to learn maths and science. And she wrote to him, I now understand why opportunities for people to improve their lives are linked to good, honest government that doesn't steal our money. She says, this time, Tata, I must tell you, I am voting blue. And if you want to bring the same opportunities to the Eastern Cape, I urge you to turn blue too. This is the real story of Nosipho and Thandi. And then, at Christmas time, she goes back to visit her father. And she sees that instead of the picturesque mud huts that they'd been there when she left, there were just tin shacks everywhere. Still no security of tenure, still no agricultural production, very few men because they were all working in town, leaving their wives to hold on to their land. The school was now in ruins, and she looked at a picture on her cell phone of her daughter Thandi graduating with honors from the Maths and Science School in Constantia, and she said to her father, Tata, ijaha yakuhlala ilikhaya lam, ngoba kulapho inkaba yam ikhona. Kodwa, intombi yam uThandi wazalelwa eKapa eNtshona Koloni. Likhaya lethu ngoku genxa yamathuba angcono. She said to her father, Dad, Jaha will always be my home because my umbilical cord is buried here. But my daughter, Thandi, was born in the Western Cape, in Cape Town. That is now our home because it has offered us better opportunities. That, Madam Speaker, is the story of progress. Progress is unbelievably difficult. It only becomes through massive human effort. And part of that effort is a government that creates a context for the growth of opportunity. It cannot take away everybody's problems, but it can at least be sure that your babies are born in safety, that they have the right inoculations, and they have a start in life without which you can't make use of your opportunities. And while this government has been in office, and I really hope for many years to come, we will continue understanding that the role of the state is to preserve people's rights and freedoms, to extend their opportunities, and to do those things for people that they cannot be expected to do for themselves, while they make every effort to use those opportunities to improve their own lives and leave a better legacy for their children. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Thank you, Honourable Premier. That then concludes the debate on the Premier's State of the Province address. That concludes the business for the day. The House is adjourned.